Overpopulation is an intensifying crisis throughout the humanity. Currently, the world population has crossed over the 6 billion mark. Yet, economists are advocating the positive side to population expansion. A baby will be born with 2 hands, which communicative progress and development in the long run. It shows the ways to new developments through advancement in technology, effective demand for goods and services, and market expansion, new inventions, so on and so forth. With the increased general population, nations are blessed with a large number of labor force, making cheaper labor force as well due to its enormous availability. However, economists argue that population growth and overpopulation decreases the productivity per worker. The significant characteristics to this theory is Malthusian diminishing return to labor, as the lack of capital including land does not increase with the same proportion of population. This leads to imbalance of population and production. This can be controlled by positive checks and preventive controls. Yet, a number of economists indicate that there is a correlation between population growth and economic growth and development. Although one cannot say that India's population has 100% positive effect on economic growth, but one may say that India is certainly profiting from an enormous population. Thus, the relationship between the population and the development is the endless dispute. In this correlation, the discussion is in fact thought-provoking. Definition of population versus economic development. Wikipedia says a population is the summation of all the organisms of the same group or species which live in the same geographical area and have the capability of interbreeding. Economic development is the sustained connected action of policy market and communicates that promote standard of living and economic health of a specific area. The topic highlights that the population expansion has the negative side. For example, overpopulation creates new struggle including scarcity, poverty, and even unemployment. Population slow the way to socio-economic and political unrest and instability. Economists have the conclusion that expansion of police stations, courts, and medical facilities are not the authentic indication of development, but leads to additional responsibilities. In the long run, the resulting scarcity of goods and services available to increasing population leads to starvation. Since the demand is very high for the resources and the resources are scarce in nature, the prices of the commodities are moved up due to the population increase. The intensifying price in return reduces the demand for certain commodities. The decrease in the demand is due to the insufficient income per capita, so consumers cannot afford to purchase many necessary goods in the market. That leads to starvation, scarcity, and even disease and syndrome. It is said that idle mind is devil's workshop. The United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimate the earth has the capability to grow food for some 33 billion people. India is projected to be the world's most populous country by 2025, already containing 17% of the world's population. India's population growth rate is 1.41%. China's growth rate is 0.7%, ranking second in the world in according to 2011 census. Record also highlights that the rate of population in India is still faster than the China. According to American census 2010, more than 32 lakhs of population in America of Indian origin, which is still increasing. India has more than 50% of the population below the age of 25 and more than 65% hang around below the age of 35. India's population has crossed 1.21 billion as per the census of 2011. In 2001, the sex ratio, that is the number of females per 1000 males of population, was 933. Some experts believe that India 2011 census shows a serious decline in the number of girls under the age of 7. Activists fear 8 million females may have been dying between 2001 to 2011. We rank 127th among 177 countries on the Human Development Index. There are 254 districts in the country which have a density of more than 400 persons per square kilometer. These districts are found in 3 clusters. The first cluster spreads over large parts of Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and West Bengal, adjoining districts of Haryana, Punjab and Delhi. It took 2,50,000 years for the world's population to reach 1 billion. The 4th billion only took 17 years, whereas the last 3 billion took approximately 12 years to each. We reached 7 billion people on the planet in the January of this year. Overpopulation is a major problem in both developed and developing countries. Density populated developing countries contribute over 95% of the population. Intensification and rapid population growth could lead to environmental deterioration. Developed countries are less densely populated and contribute very little to the population growth. However, they cause massive ecological damage to the wasteful, unnecessary and unbalanced consumption, the consequences of which could adversely affect both the developed and developing countries. In many developing countries, continued population growth has resulted in a pressure on land, fragmentation of land holding, collapsing fisheries, shrinking forests, rising temperatures, loss of plant and animal species. Population expansion has affected in the following fields. The per capita forecast biomass in the country is only about 6 tons as against global average of 82 tons. Adverse effect on species diversity. Conversion of habitat to some other land use such as agriculture, urban development, forestry operation. About 70 to 80% of the fresh water bogs and lakes in attractive flood plains have been lost in the last 50 years. Tropical deforestation and destruction of mangrove for commercial needs and fuel wood. The country's mangrove areas have reduced from 7 lakhs hectares to 4 lakhs hectares in the last 50 years. Intense grazing by domestic livestock, poaching and illegal harvesting of the wildlife, increase in agricultural area, high use of chemical fertilizers, pesticides, water stagnation, soil erosion, soil salinity and low productivity, high level of fuel burning causing large scale indoor pollution, encroachment on habitat for rail and road construction, hereby fragmenting the habitat, increase in commercial activities such as mining and unsustainable resource extraction, degradation of coastal and other water ecosystem from the domestic sewage, pesticides, fertilizers and industrial effluents. Over the fishing in water bodies and introduction of wild plant life and exotic species, disturbance from increased recreational activity and tourism causing pollution of natural ecosystem with the wastes left behind by the people. The urbanization of the planet overcoming the decades will exercise intense pressure on the sensitivity of industry to innovate. The proportion of people in developing countries who live in cities has almost doubled since 1960 from less than 22% to more than 40%, while in the more developed regions the urban share has grown from 61% to 76%. Urbanization is projected to continue well into the next century. By 2030, it is expected that nearly 5 billion, that is 61% of the world's 8.1 billion people, will have residence in cities. The building materials and construction industries must adopt new practices to meet the increased demand for materials to build the housing and transportation infrastructure needed to support the anticipated increase in the city dwellers. Earth will be home to more than 9 billion people in 2050. The jump of 2.3 billion over 4 decades, the global milestone, will have a pronounced urban desires. 2/3 of world's population will reside in megacities, urban centers with 10 million inhabitants. Rapid population growth and urbanization will have a dramatic effect on the increased demand for jobs, housing, energy, clean water, food, transportation, infrastructure and special services. It will also be a significant factor and magnifying the impacts of global warming. Sustainable growth of megacities is crucial to the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Consider that 20 largest cities consume 80% of the world's energy. Urban areas generate 80% of the greenhouse effect worldwide. Global warming, due to increasing use of fossil fuels mainly by the developed countries, could have a serious effect on the populous coastal region in developing countries, their food production and essential water supplies. The ecological impact of rising oceans would include increased flooding, coastal erosion and displacement of millions of people living in near the coast. Patterns of perception are also likely to change, which combined with increased average temperatures could substantially alter the relative agricultural productivity of different regions. Greenhouse gas emissions are closely linked with both population growth and development. Slower population growth in developing countries and ecologically sustainable lifestyles in the developed countries would make reduction in a greenhouse gas emission easier to achieve and provide more time and options for adaptation to climate change. Urban population growth has exceeded the development of basic minimum services. Housing, water supply, sewage and solid waste disposal are far from adequate, increasing waste generation at home. Offices and industries coupled with poor waste disposal facilities result in rapid environmental deterioration. Increasing automobiles add to air pollution. All these have adverse effect on ecology and health. India also experiences rapid urbanization. This urbanization arises from India's highly improvised population. Reduction of natural resources, especially fossil fuels, has increased levels of air pollution, water pollution, soil contamination and noise pollution, so on and so forth. Once a country has industrialized and become wealthy, a combination of government regulation and technological innovation causes pollution to decline substantially even as the population continues to grow. Deforestation and loss of ecosystem that sustain global atmosphere, oxygen and carbon dioxide balance, about the 8 million hectares of forest are lost each year. Changes in atmospheric consumption are consequent global warming. We are putting gases into the atmosphere and substances into the ground that take a very long time to be absorbed into the general biosphere. We are removing old growth timber faster than it can replace itself. We are washouting materials into the ocean that can affect the entire ocean food chain. The most significant difficulty connected with the population development is resource scarcity. The water table in India is falling by an average of 6 feet every year. Destruction of water for domestic, industrial and agricultural uses leading to increased river pollution and decrease in self-cleaning properties of rivers. Increasing water requirement leading to tapping deeper underground bed which have high content of arsenic or fluoride resulting health problems. As per reports, around 1 million people die every year due to water related diseases. There already is a scarcity of drinkable water, and with the more population the problem only on a rise. Unhygienic living condition for many based upon water resource depletion, discharge of raw sewage and solid waste disposal. Intensive factory farming to support large populations, the most significant difficulty connected with population development. We will have the unproductive territory if we continue the identical chemical fertilizer. It results in human threats including the evolution and spread of antibiotic resistant bacteria diseases like endosulfan, excessive air and water pollution and new virus that infect humans, increased chance of emergence of new epidemics and epidemic that is geographically widespread occurring throughout the region or even throughout the world. For many environmental and social reasons including overcrowded living conditions, malnutrition and inadequate, inaccessible or non-existent health care, the poor are more likely to be exposed to the infections or diseases. Rural poor have the inadequate access to basic minimum services because of poor connectivity, lack of awareness, inadequate and poorly functioned infrastructure. Poverty persists in urban, semi-urban areas. Awareness about the glaring inequalities in close urban settings may lead to social unrest. There are ongoing efforts to improve these, but with the growing aspirations of the younger educated population, these efforts may prove to be inadequate to meet the increasing needs both in terms of quality of services. It is rising as many millions of people in developing countries, but experts suggest that climate change will greatly compound the problem. The strengthening demand for resources including food is primarily caused by growing economies of India. The demand for resources and for the food in particular will grow exponentially as developing countries aspire to Western way of life focused on the consumption. Demand for food is projected to rise by 70% by 2050 according to the UN experts. One of the main but most basic resource we need to survive is water, food. Obviously, as more people pollute the earth, there is a greater and greater demand for food. Interestingly, there is enough food on the earth to feed all of us, yet hunger and starvation are still a threatening reality. 1 out of every 7 people goes to bed hungry. Every day, about 50,000 people are die out of malnutrition and hunger related diseases. Almost 18,000 of them are children under the age of 5. Ironically, the highest rates of population growth exist in developing countries where the food is most needed. If the rate of food production is already unable to keep up with the population today, then these countries will face even more serious hunger related problems in the future. In order to increase food production in these third world countries, there must be increased agriculture and technology. These underdeveloped countries must be introduced to new technologies that will spread up to production and distribution of food. It is believed that in order to feed all the people living in the world in 2050, the production will have to increase by 70%. We must develop a solution to this problem, or we will not able to sustain the human population. The lack of drinking water is also a major problem. With an increase in population, the rate has only gone sky high. Starvation, malnutrition or poor diet with ill health and diet deficiency decreases. Example, childhood disease caused by deficiency of vitamin D and sunlight, that is rickets. The research shows that 57% of the current world population of about 6.5 billion is malnutrition. Malnourishment strikes 64% of the children in India. Malnutrition is not only the direct cause of death for 6 million children each year, but also makes millions of people much more susceptible to deadly health problems such as acute respiratory infections, malaria, and host of other life-threatening diseases, according to the report. Overpopulation is not only affects on families and individuals, it affects communities and countries as a whole. Having a large workforce is positive, but there are also hundreds of negatives associated with it. Often overpopulation requires some extreme measures as taken in China to control it, given the terrible consequences it has. When there are more people, there is more garbage to throw. Industries produce more goods for use, and toxins are thrown into the rivers and seas, polluting them. This is a major cause of concern about everyone as it affects on the whole universe. Additional people require supplementary vehicles and services. This is a negative effect on the economy and environmental and health of people. Overpopulation has already led to the destruction of many animals. People are destroying their environment because they need resources to use and places to live. Land cannot be created or increased. To accommodate the growing population, forests are being cut, which affects the environment extremely. Trees control contamination and maintain the environmental balance. With a fall in number of trees, the pollution has only increased with the affected ozone layer and the world's temperature. This change has exposed people to several kinds of diseases. With a decreasing ozone layer, sun rays reach the earth strongly, causing temperatures to rise. This is a major reason of skin cancer and other diseases that have increased in the past few years. Organizations are working hard to control the population and create awareness regarding it. Developed countries have implemented laws and increased awareness regarding the adverse effects of overpopulation to control it. However, much has to be done in the case of developing countries where people acknowledge the adversities associated with the overpopulation. The most important problem associated with population growth are low levels of education, poor health standards, poverty, scarce housing, natural resources, reduction, wars, and economic and political domination by other countries. Decrease in economic growth